All right, gotcha. Just trying not to make noise because I'm doing a training mode. Hello, everyone. We're gonna start around 1:10. Just give time for everybody to jump in.
I could do it anyway.
All right, guys. Once again, we're gonna start around 1:10. I'm gonna give 10 minutes for people to get in this, and we'll start just to give you enough time. This training shouldn't take any more than 30, 40 minutes max.
Recording in
All right, everyone, we're going to be starting in 4 minutes and counting. What's going on, guys? All right, we're gonna get started. Thank you for tuning in. This is the training for contract to leases. I'm gonna be going over the initial step of a rental to help you guys out, so you guys can know exactly what to write on contract to leases, what things to look for, some tips and tricks. My name is Christopher Nin. I'm the branch manager here at West Gables. And yeah, I was gonna tell you guys, if you want any questions you guys have, if you want, write them down, and then I'll have like a little Q&A session towards the end that I can answer any questions, just so we can move efficiently through this training as quickly as possible. So give me 1 second, we'll go ahead and share my screen, and then we're gonna get rocking. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect, awesome, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna go here we're gonna start off from the MiamiRE.com. So obviously you're gonna log in. This is gonna be your gateway. And this is gonna be your MLS. Guys, if you can, please just check if you're unmuted. See if you're unmuted and mute yourself, just because so I don't hear no noise in the background. Okay. All right. So when you guys are doing rentals, obviously you're going to be looking here in the MLS, and we're going to start off here and with the search bar. You're going to go to where it says rentals. You're going to enter whatever criteria it is you're looking for. So let's just say you're looking for a rental of between $2,000 to $3,000. So I'm gonna click the map here. Let me go here. Let me just let's say you're looking at the 33184 zip code. Oh, there's only one match there. So I'm gonna go to results. This is gonna be the listing. Okay, so it's $3,000 a month. You have the address here. You have the legal description. We're gonna scroll down here. Broker remarks. See if it says anything specifically here. Here it talks about moving costs. If it's renewable. If there's an application fee of an association. Here it says $60. Here it has the listing agent's information. You have their name, the brokerage, the phone number, their email. Here, very important. We're gonna see how much money we're gonna make off this rental. So it says buyer agent, transaction broker, non-rep. They're offering half a month commission. Here it talks about days on market. Here it says the showing instructions, your showing assist, the listing type. Let me see what else. The original price, if it ever was a different price. The occupancy, if it's vacant, if it's tenant occupied. Let me see what else is informative here. Pretty simple. Townhouse, all that stuff. So guys, contract to lease. What is a contract to lease? Contract to lease is the initial offer. If anybody tells you, yeah, send me your offer, send me the CTL, send me the contract to lease. This is going to be the document you are going to be preparing, having your client sign, and you're going to be sending it over to the listing agent along with all your supporting documentation. So let's go back to the gateway. Okay, let me move this right quick. So down here. Okay, so let's say this is going to be the property you're going to be renting out. There's going to be a few steps that I'm going to teach you guys that I personally like to do. So number one, we're going to go to form simplicity. We're going to go ahead and we're going to start a new transaction. You're going to put in the address of the property while you're creating the transaction. Copy, enter address. If for whatever reason, maybe you don't want to put in, you don't have to technically always put in the address there. You can just put the client's name. So I'm going to put, let's say it's for me. I'm going to put Christopher Nin, transaction name. You can name it whatever you want. I usually like to name it the client's name. Property type, residential. And transaction type, we're going to be going with lease/rental. You're going to create transaction. Now this is the transaction that's created. I'm gonna go right here where it says forms. I'm gonna add blank form. In the library, I'm gonna select all libraries. On search form, I'm going to put contract 2, and I can just search. And right here, the contract to lease pops up. Make sure it's this one. You're gonna open it up. And here is your contract to lease. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just gonna go over with you guys step by step so you guys can know exactly what to write on this. So we're gonna go back to the MLS. Tip, guys, one thing I like to do always is if this is the property I'm gonna be submitting an offer to, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna save this as a PDF with my file. It's gonna be one of the documentations. So I'm gonna go ahead, actions. I'm gonna hit print. I'm gonna go right here where it says print to PDF. I'm gonna go ahead, click here to download it. I'm just gonna make a quick little temp file. Training. Okay, so I'm gonna save it and I'm gonna leave it as agent full. Just reasons why I like to keep this. One, you're gonna need this to go ahead and upload your commission towards the end. But two, very important, this is where you have the proof of whatever commission you are going to make. If for whatever reason you go under contract, let's say, and let's say this listing agent decides to go ahead and edit this listing. And when you go ahead and you request your half commission, they say, no, it's not half. It's actually only $500 you're supposed to be getting. If you don't have this saved document, you have no proof that yours was half of a commission. Do not assume that the association can go back and see that when this was listed, it had half a month. They do not. Maybe I don't know about now, maybe they changed, but at least before, I've spoken to personal friends that work the association and they do not have a way of seeing what was originally inputted or anything. So you always want to make sure you save this just as proof of whatever commission you're going to be getting, whether it's for rentals or purchases. You always want to save this agent full. So we went ahead and saved that. Now I'm going to go back to results. There's a tab right here on the top that's a little I. It's called IMAP. For those of you that don't know, this is pretty much your tax roll. It has all the information that's on title, any pretty much public information on the property. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this. It's going to open up a new tab. Here I'm going to go ahead and get the information of the property. So the owner's name is SIV Holdings Inc. It has the property address. It has the mailing address of the actual owner. Obviously, it's a different address than the property address than the subject property because it's an investment property. To make sure that you do not put this address as a property that you're going to be submitting the offer on. It's always going to be the property address here. Here you have the folio number. Here's the type of property it is. It's a condo, townhouse. Here's the legal description. You scroll down here, it talks about other information about the property, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, yada, yada, yada. So we're gonna go back to contract to lease. Now, let me move this right quick to, okay, so contract. First line talks about prospective landlord. Here, you're gonna go here where tax roll, you're gonna see the owner's name, which is SIV Holdings. You're gonna go ahead and copy that. And you're gonna paste it right here where it says landlord. Prospective tenant, here you're going to put everybody who was in charge of the lease. So if it's a couple, if it's 2 roommates, you're gonna put both of their names here. If you don't want to put like, for example, let's say it's a couple and and their small baby, or there are 2 or 3 kids that are under 18 that are living with, you don't put them here. Here you're only going to put who are the people in charge of the lease. So for training sake, we're going to go ahead and put my name. Now here, this talks about SIV Holdings Inc., prospective landlord, and Christopher Nin, prospective tenant, agree to execute a lease agreement no later than. This date is not a date for them to sign this contract to lease. This date is a date that you are stating that the landlord is going to go ahead and actually send over, and landlord and tenant are going to execute an actual lease agreement. Do not mistaken thinking that this is your actual lease. This is not. This is just an initial offer. It's a contract to lease. It is not the actual lease. The actual lease is about 16 pages long. There's going to be another training for that next week, and we'll go over that as well. But right now, we're going to stick to the contract to lease. So here, for example, today's the 3rd, so I'm not going to put tomorrow's date. I mean, unless it's super aggressive, but realistically, it's not going to happen. What I will go ahead and do is maybe give it a day or two, or maybe even maybe till Friday for them to go ahead and send over that full lease, just because by the time you have your client send you all documents, all this stuff, on top of that, sending it over to the listing agent, having them sign it, get over to you back. For all you know, you might get it back super quick, but just so you don't have to keep going back and forth with dates, give it a couple days. So I'm going to put here May 6th. Property described below. The lease will include the set forth in paragraph 312 of the contract to lease and other mutually agreeable terms. This part right here, landlords or tenant will prepare lease. I always check off landlord. It's the landlord's property. He is the one that's going to be creating this lease. Deposits, number 2, very important. So those of you that know or don't know, obviously, once you submit a contract to lease, you have to go ahead and put a deposit with a title company or an escrow agent in order to make this contract valid. So when I go here, maybe you in certain situations, maybe if it's a single family home with no association, where you're writing up a contract to lease, you're writing up a lease agreement, and they're going to move into the property in a day or two, you do not have to you don't have to put this with a title company, because obviously you're just going to go ahead and you're literally within 48 hours, the tenant is taking possession of the property, and all movable funds will be given to the listing agent / landlord, so you don't have to put it in escrow. But for the most part, if you're dealing with an association or something that is going to take it's still taking a few couple days for the tenant to move in, you have to put the deposit with an escrow agent. The deposit is normally 1 month of the rent So, for example, how much was this rent? This was $3,000. I'm going to go here. I'm going to put $3,000. 2, and then here, whatever escrow agent or title company you're using, you're going to put their information. So, for example, if you're using Lifestyle Title, you're going to go Lifestyle Title of New World. Very important. This is something that some of you don't do. This is something that I do, because if you notice here, the difference between the deposit or the escrow from an actual purchase contract to a rental, a contract to lease, is that the purchase contract, it specifically gives you automatically 3 days for your client to put that escrow in. Here, it's talking about with the intention of entry, the tenant has paid $3,000. So it's basically stating that you have already put the money in escrow, which most cases you haven't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in parentheses, I'm going to put within 3 days from executed lease agreement. So that basically means is once we sign this contract to lease, the landlord has to go ahead and send over the lease agreement. Once you get that lease agreement in, you can go ahead and deposit the escrow. You can do it right after, but at least it's giving you the 3 days. It's giving you protection of your client, that they can't say you breached contract the contract terms by not depositing it, because here you're at least putting it that you're going to put it within 3 days from the actual executed lease. Now, where it talks about property address, you're going to go ahead and get the address of the property they're going to be leasing. I'm going to copy this, full copy. We're going to go here and we're going to paste it. Pretty simple. Now here, the property will be unfurnished or furnished, attached inventory. So is your client leasing this property furnished or not? For the most part, most of them come unfurnished. So, and the way you can find this out is you go right here where it talks about furnished info, and you can see if this is a furnished or unfurnished rental. So this is unfurnished, so you're going to click unfurnished. Now here, the property will be used for only residential purposes and occupied by only tenant and the following persons. Here is where you would put if maybe the couple's in-laws are going to be staying with them, or the mother or the grandmother or the kids. You will specify here who else is going to be living in the property with these tenants. Now, I'm a single man. I don't have nobody that's gonna be living with me, so I leave it blank. Number 4, lease term. The lease will begin on, so obviously today's the 3rd. This property is a property that is a condo, so it has an association. So technically, by law, associations have 30 days to give you an approval. It doesn't sometimes always take that long. Some associations are quicker than others, but you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time in order not to have to go ahead and create an addendum for this lease. So if today is the 3rd, I would go ahead, possibly if I can, put June 1st as the move-in date. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to put this for a year lease. If it's 6 months, you do the 6 months. If it's 7 months, whatever it is, whatever you're agreeing to. But let's say we're doing a year lease. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go all the way to, this is June 23. I'm not going to put June 1st, 2023. I'm going to go one day before. So it's going to be March 31st, 2023. This part right here is going to be filling itself out blank. So obviously if you try to click on it, you're going to see you can't. So I'm going to leave that the way it is. Now, most rentals require first, last, and security deposit, or first and 2 security deposits. It all depends on whatever the listing is. Ways you can find out, you can go right here where it talks about rental deposit includes, and then here it would say first, last security, first and 2 securities, and such and so forth. Sometimes I would recommend you guys go into the broker remarks and see if it specifies anything there. If you don't see anything of that, always to verify, call the listing agent and be like, hey, listen, what is the landlord asking? Is it first month and 2 securities? Is it first, last, and security? What are the terms for this lease? I don't see them on your listing. So let's assume that this is first, last, and security. So you're gonna go right here, simple, where it says first month's rent plus applicable taxes. You're gonna go ahead and put $3,000. I'm always, I put these due here. I don't really put a date. I go ahead and put in due at move in. Then I'm going to go here where it says last month's rent plus tax applicable. I'm going to put the $3,000 as well. Once again, due at move in. Then security deposit here. I'm going to go ahead and put $3,000 as well. Move in. Now, let's go over these other lines. Let's say for whatever reason, your client says, you know what, to make my offer strong, I'm going to pay 6 months up front. So where it talks about here, advance rent for a month of plus applicable taxes. Now, let's say it's 6 months. You already have 1, 2. Now you got to get 3,000 times 4, which is $12,000. You put $12,000 here for month of, and here you're going to put July, August, September, October to October. And then you're going to put here in at move-in. Once again, that's only, it's not done all the time, but just so you guys know, if you wanted to put 6 months up front, or if you wanted to give an additional month of rent, an extra month, if they just wanted to look, I'm going to pay you first, second, last, and security, then you would go ahead and put $3,000 here, and you would put here for the month of July, and you put in move in. Let's erase that. Let's leave it just with the 3 months. If for whatever reason, maybe they don't want first, last, and security, they want first month and 2 securities, you're going to go ahead, instead of putting last month's rent here, you're going to leave that blank, and you're just going to go ahead and double up on the security. So you're going to put $6,000 and leave it in as move-in. Now, security deposit for association. If the property is in an association, some associations do require a security deposit from the tenant, or some of them strictly want the landlord to put it. My recommendation to you guys, and if you want, write down these notes. Whenever there's an association, always, when you're writing these offers or getting ready to submit offers, get the contact information for the association. Ask them to send you over a copy of the application for lease and go through it. See if it talks about anything of a security deposit required for the common areas. And if the tenant is going to be responsible for it, this is where you would put it. Some associations require a full month. Some of them require only a $500 deposit. It's all case by case, but always just put in the back of your mind, especially with condos. Condos are very notorious for this. Some single family and townhouse communities might, but for the most part, condo associations always require. And one things you can do, obviously, because tenants, for the most part, some of them complain about coming up 3 months, and then to find out they have to put a 4th month. I will always go ahead, and if you go ahead and you verify that the association is also going to require a deposit, speak with the listing agent and ask them if the landlord is going to be taking care of that on their end. Because if the landlord is going to be taking care of that themselves, then you are not going to be putting here the security deposit of the association. You will leave that blank. Here, when it talks about pet deposit, if the tenant has a pet and the landlord requires a pet deposit, this is where you're going to be putting it. Once again, on due dates, I always recommend you put move in. If there's any other monies due before occupancy, this is where you would put it, other, and you would specify what it is and you would put it here. Now, moving on. Paragraph 2, deposit will be credited as the following. So here is talking about the money that you have with the title company. What is it going to be credited as? Is it going to be credited as the first month's rent, the last month's rent, the security deposit, or other? For the most part, this deposit that you have with the title company or the escrow agent is technically the commission that's going to be split between the realtors. So what I always do is I'm always going to check off the first month's rent. So I'm going to put $3,000, which that's what's in the escrow, and I would put it and leave it checked off as 2 first month's rent. Scrolling down, rental payments. Now here, first line, tenant will pay total rent for the lease term of. So what you're going to do is, if the tenant is doing a year lease, you're going to go ahead and calculate $3,000 times 12. So $3,000 times 12 is $36,000. So you're going to put $36,000. If your tenant is doing a 6 month, you're going to go ahead 3,000 times 6, which is $18,000. Tenant will also pay taxes on the rent when applicable in the amount of, for the most part, all year, anything that's 6 months or more, the taxes are already included in the rent. You do not pay additional taxes on top of your rent. Anything less than 6 months is considered short term, and for the most part, you will have to calculate taxes in there. But that's a whole other situation, which you'll get there once you get there. But for the most part, we're doing a year lease here. So I'm going to go ahead and put here 0 because we're not paying taxes. We're only paying the rent. Now, here you have the option. If your tenant is paying it all out at once, then you're going here in full on. You put the date, or you put in here move in, and you put the amount of $36,000. Obviously, for the most part, no one pays their rent all at once. So we go here monthly, and then you're going to go put on what date is this rent being paid. So obviously we're starting the lease here on the 1st. So you put the 1st. If maybe you're starting the lease on the 15th, you can put the 15th. You can put whatever. This is basically the day that when the rent is going to be due. So I'm going to put the 1st, and then you're going to put here in the amount of $3,000 is the monthly rent. Here, pet number 7, pets prohibited or permitted. If it's permitted and you've already seen what it is, you put permitted, and then you can put as the restrictions, no more than 70 pounds, for example, if the association allows only a dog up to 70 pounds. Or you can put here 1 dog, or you can put 2 dogs, no more than 70 pounds, whatever you want, however you want to describe it, but this is technically where you put, if he has pets, you would put here permitted. Smoking, is the landlord, are you going to be allowed to smoke in the property? Yes, or no. I mean, I have never met a landlord that allows you to smoke within the property, so I always mark this off as prohibited. Keep scrolling down. Number 9, utilities. Tenant will pay for all utility services during the lease term, connection charges and deposits for activating existing utility connections for the property, except for now, which landlord agrees to provide at landlord's expense. Now, this is a condo. For the most part, tenants don't pay for water because the water is already included in the association fee. So if you're renting out a condo to your tenant, for the most part, I would put here, if the property is in an association fee, and then I would put water. If there is anything else, for example, if there is lawn care that the landlord is going to be paying, you would put lawn care. If for whatever reason, if some newer buildings in the association is included the Wi-Fi and basic cable, I would put Wi-Fi / internet, and then I would put basic cable. This is basically anything that the landlord is agreeing that is part of their expenses that they're going to be paying for. You put it here. Electricity. I mean, if it's, for example, let's say you're renting out, you're doing an efficiency, and all utilities are included. Then here you're going to put electricity, Wi-Fi, water, association fee, all that stuff. Moving on to number 10, maintenance. Landlord will be responsible for the maintenance and repair of the property, except for which tenant agrees to maintain and repair. So here, for example, if the property has a pool and the tenant is in charge of pool maintenance, you would put pool maintenance. If they're in charge of lawn, you would put the lawn maintenance. If some things you can put here, any repairs under $100, tenant is responsible. It's pretty much anything that the landlord is not going to be maintaining or repairing that the tenant is going to be responsible for. You would put it here. Number 11, if the property is in an association, you would have to go ahead and fill this out. If it's not within an association, then you can forget about this and leave this blank. Now let's read this. Make sure you read it. Where applicable, the lease will be contingent upon condominium / cooperative / homeowners association approval. Here talks about the landlord and tenant. Give me one second. Go ahead, grab that, Ash. Landlord tenant will pay a non-refundable application fee of. So if there's an application fee, once again, we go here to the matrix and we go ahead and we see that we know it's in an association. We're going to scroll down here where it talks about rent information. Application fee, here it states that it's $60. If you want to verify, because sometimes not all this information is as accurate as possible, you can, like I said, before submitting anything, get in contact with the association, ask them to send you over an application of the association, and then you'll be able to see what the actual fees are for the application. So here, for the most part, tenant is always going to be responsible for the application fee. So you're going to check off tenant, and you're going to put here whatever the fee was. So this one states it was $60. And make application for association approval here with the date. This date, guys, is extremely important. Why do I say extremely important? Because obviously a tenant cannot move into a property until they receive approval from the association. If they get denied, you guys, the contract to lease gets canceled and their escrow gets given back to them. They're not a fault. They're not in breach. However, let's say for here, today's the 3rd. Let's say here you go ahead and you put the same day as the day that the lease is going to be given. If for whatever reason, if your tenant does not apply to the association by this date, and God forbid, the approval is either denied or not given by the time the lease is supposed to start, your tenant can be at breach and can possibly lose that first initial deposit. So very important. You always want to put here a specific date that gives enough time to get all the paperwork necessary and give your tenant enough time to go to the association and drop off that application. You can drop off that application for them. They don't have to do it themselves, but you gotta make sure that you get all the application, all the documents required, make sure they fill out everything, and you go personally to the association, drop it off, and make sure that you get some type of confirmation from them that it was dropped off that day. Sometimes they go ahead and they scan a copy of the check for the application and they put a signature on it. Save that to your document. So for whatever reason, something happens, you have proof that you dropped off the application within time. Here it says, if such approval is not obtained before beginning the lease, either party may terminate the lease by written notice to the other at any time before association approval, and tenant will receive a return of deposit paid. If the lease is not terminated, rent will abate until association approval is obtained. Additional terms, very important. For the most part, this always stays blank, but I always tell people, for an example, it happened to me once. I showed a property, they liked it, they loved it, they said something at the offer. On the day of the walkthrough, the tenant was asking, because it was a very expensive rental, the tenant was asking the listing agent, hey, is there any way possible that we can change these closets? They had the simple little aluminum, cheap hanging closets on the wall, and the tenant said that they didn't like that because they've had that fall on them many times, that if the landlord can go ahead and put actual good closets or build out the closets, and the listing agent says, hey, listen, you should have put that in your additional terms. Things you can put here that are obviously to make sure that if for example, when you're doing when you're walking the property and you see that it's very dirty or it needs to be painted, if your tenant wants them to paint the entire property prior to you moving in, or if they want a deep clean prior to them moving in, on these additional terms, you will break down and put whatever it is. You can put here, property shall be professionally painted prior to tenant taking possession of property, or property shall be professionally cleaned prior to tenant taking over property. Or if there's anything wrong with the property, you can put here that it shall be fixed or done prior to tenant taking possession of property. Other terms that you can put here, which are smart, is in the event any items, landlord is responsible for repairing any appliances or items on the property, landlord shall make repairs within 7 days of written notification. Just because I've had it times where a tenant says something happens with one of the appliances and it's been 6 months and the landlord hasn't fixed it. So you want to put here in your additional terms like that, just so in the event one of your tenants come across any of these type of landlords, the landlord is technically in breach of the contract, and you can go ahead and your tenant can get out of that lease if they wish to without any penalty. Number 13, very important, background credit reference check. If landlord determines a tenant background credit or reference check is not acceptable, the landlord may terminate this contract prior to signing the lease by refunding the deposit to the tenant. Thereupon, the parties will be released from all obligations under this contract. Very, very important. If you get this contract to lease executed, happened to me once, you get it executed, you think, oh, you're telling your client, listen, I got you the rental, everything's good, they accepted it, but you have not executed the actual full 16-page lease. And once you submit this and the landlord decides to go ahead and say, hey, listen, prior to me submitting the actual lease, I want a background check, or I want a credit check, and they go ahead and they do a credit check, they can, even though they signed this contract to lease, go ahead and terminate this contract and deny you due to credit, background, or reference checks, even though they've executed a contract to lease. Mind you, a contract to lease is just an agreement. It's not an actual lease contract. The lease contract is the one that comes after this. Once you get that lease contract signed, which is about 16 pages, like I said, then you are officially under contract, and the landlord cannot cancel on you. Number 14, service member status. Is the prospective tenant a service member as defined in FS 25001? Yes, no. If yes, landlord must provide written approval or denial of tenant's application within 7 days after receipt. If the tenant is denied, landlord must provide a reason for the denial for this tenant. FS 25001, if I'm not mistaken, is basically talking about military, active military or military personnel or specific type of service members. If your tenant is one of those as defined here, if you want any clarification, I suggest you to Google this right here, see what it means. If your tenant is applicable for that, but yes, it just basically means if the landlord decides to say, hey, listen, I'm denying your contract to lease, I am not accepting your application or your offer, they must provide a written notice and they must give a reason why they are denying this tenant. Number 15, failure to perform. If tenant fails to perform any of the promises of this contract, the deposit paid by tenant may be retained or for the account of the landlords as agreed upon liquidated damages, consideration for the execution of this contract and in full settlement of all claims, and the parties will be released from obligation under this contract. If the landlord fails to perform any promises of this contract, tenant may elect to receive a refund of the deposit paid without waiving any actions for damages resulting from the landlord's breach. So basically saying, if the tenant fails to deliver on any of these terms on this offer, landlord can keep that deposit. If the landlord breaches anything on this contract, tenant can cancel and receive his deposit without any penalty. Number 16, the following real estate licenses and brokers involved in this procurement of contract to lease. Very simple. Prospective tenant agent's name, you're going to put your name. You're going to put Lifestyle International Realty here. Prospective landlord agent's name. Like I said, you're going to go here to the listing, scroll down to the bottom. Here's the name of the agent and here's the brokerage. That's where you're going to go ahead and you're going to put that there. Once you have that, scroll down. This part, bottom part, is just for initials and signatures. So once you have all this, fill this all out. You're going to go ahead. You're going to have your client initial on the bottom of this page where it says prospective tenant. Scroll down again. You're going to have them initial here. Scroll down here, signatures here with date, and then you're going to have them initial on the bottom page, and you have the offer prepared. Now, things I would recommend you when you guys are submitting this offer, you're going to need to submit it with supporting documentation. What do I mean by that? You're most likely going to have to submit with copies of IDs of the tenants. You're going to have to submit proof of income. For the most part, it's normally the last 3 pay stubs, the last 2 bank statements, also maybe a promise letter from your job, talking about how much do you make. You can obviously sometimes go to your bank and ask them for a bank reference letter, which talks about how much of an average do you have in your account monthly, or how much money comes in and goes out. Your taxes are also a form of proof of income. You're going to need to provide a credit report, and a full credit report, not a screenshot, a full credit report. So you can have them go to myexperian.com, equifax.com, pull out a full credit report that has detailed information about your credit. Download the full report, save it as a PDF, and you're going to include it in your offer. You're also going to request them for a criminal background check. Sometimes the landlord doesn't require that, but for the most part, in today's market, rentals are very tough as well with everything. You want to make your offer stand out as much as possible. So I would recommend you having as much of these as possible. Another good thing is a tenant info sheet. On nricloud.com, if I'm not mistaken, you go to the documents, we have one. It's just basically an info sheet that your tenant fills out with all the basic information, their names, their current address, how much they're currently paying, their employer, how much do they make, any character references, just basic information on them that obviously gives more information to the landlord to make a decision. Other things you can attach there are landlord references. If your tenant is currently renting somewhere and moving somewhere else, you can request their landlord to write a letter, a reference letter for them, basically stating, Christopher Nane is a great tenant. He's been living with me for over 2-3 years. He's paid his rent always on time, never had no issues. I highly recommend him. The more documents and the more stuff you can attach to an offer, the better. Don't just always stick to just the basics, such as pay stubs, credit report, background, and offer. If your tenant can go out the way and get those reference letters, if you can include pay stubs along with bank statements, along with a letter from their job, all that does help your offer and make it stand out more. So I highly recommend you guys to do all that. And that's pretty much it. Now let's go into the Q&A. 1 second, let me just get out of this. Let me open up my screen more. Stop sharing. Okay. All right, anybody got any questions?
I have a question, Christopher. Where did you pull up the information for the property, the Southeast MLS? Like, can you show me how you got there?
Okay, I'll give you.
Please, thank you.
Okay, back to sharing my screen. So here's the listing that we found. This is the one that our client wants. I'm gonna go ahead right here. There's a little icon called iMap. I click on that and it's gonna take me here. And this is where it gives me all the information of the property. Property address, current owner, legal description, all the information.
All right. Perfect, thank you.
No problem. Anybody else? All right, so someone wrote, if we want to go back and watch this video again, how long does it take for it to be uploaded onto YouTube? To be quite honest with you, I'm not 100% sure, but I would say no longer than a week latest, but I'm sure they're pretty quick with uploading this.
Do you think we could screenshot the contract to lease that you filled out just to have?
Okay, sure. Give me 1
Please,
second.
thank you.
Let me hide this. Okay, let me. Okay, so tell me once you screenshot it.
Got that.
Just take care of your order and stuff.
All right,
Get a number.
got it. Got it. All right. Got it. Okay, it was just mainly the stuff that you had to fill out. I think we got in the first couple pages. Thank you so much.
No problem. Anybody else? How would you do a criminal background check? Simple criminal background checks. I always recommend, just because if there's apps on the MLS portal. There's one that's called My Tenant Screening that it does credit and criminal background check. However, for the most part, just so you don't make your client do a bunch of back and forth, I always recommend your client to go to a local police station and get a local background check, because if the association is going to require you to do a background check, you're going to have to go ahead and receive a local background check. They do not accept those ones that are online or anything. So the local police station, it's about $5, I think. Depending on which police station, some of them require you to do an actual appointment, but the one in Miami Lakes accepts walk-ins. So local police station for criminal background check. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in. I hope this information was useful. And next week we're doing the actual lease training, so we're going to go over the actual lease contract, which is the 16-page one. So stay tuned for that one, and hope to see you guys there.